Hey everyone, welcome to History with Shahzad. Today, we're journeying back to the early 20th century, not just to look at a single event, but to unravel the complex web of tensions that plunged the world into its first global conflict. It's a story often simplified to a single gunshot, but the truth is far more intricate. The stage for World War I was set decades before the first soldier ever stepped onto the battlefield. Think of early 1900s Europe as a forest during a long dry summer. All it needed was a single spark to set the entire continent ablaze. So, what were the real forces that pushed nations towards the brink? Let's break it down together. Historians have a handy acronym to remember the four main underlying causes of the war. MAIN, that stands for militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism. Each of these forces was a powerful current on its own, but together, they created a perfect storm of conflict that made a large-scale war almost inevitable. Let's start with A for alliances. Imagine a schoolyard where everyone has picked a side. You mess with one kid, you mess with his entire group of friends. That's essentially what the European alliance system was like before 1914. On one side, you had the Triple Alliance, a pact binding Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. On the other, the Triple Entente, linking France, Russia, and Great Britain. These weren't just friendly handshakes. They were ironclad promises of mutual defense. This intricate network of treaties meant that a small regional dispute could rapidly escalate, pulling nations into a conflict they might have otherwise avoided. It created a domino effect, where one country's declaration of war would trigger a cascade of others. Europe was wired for war. Next up, I for imperialism. This was the age of empires, a global competition for land, resources, and influence. Nations like Britain and France had already built vast empires stretching across the globe. Germany, a relatively new but powerful nation, felt it had been left out of the party. It wanted its place in the sun and began aggressively seeking colonies of its own. This scramble for territory, particularly in Africa and Asia, created constant friction and rivalry. Every colonial dispute became a test of national strength and prestige, heightening the mistrust between the major powers. The race for empire wasn't just about economics. It was about dominance, and it fueled the growing hostility. Now let's talk about for militarism. This wasn't just about having an army. It was a cultural phenomenon. European powers were locked in a massive arms race. Germany and Britain, for instance, were obsessed with naval superiority, each trying to outdo the other by building bigger, more powerful battleships, the famous dreadnoughts. Armies were expanding. Military spending was skyrocketing, and generals were creating elaborate war plans. This glorification of military power created a dangerous mindset. Many leaders and citizens began to see war not as a last resort, but as a valid tool for achieving national goals. The prevailing belief was that any war would be quick and decisive. They had the weapons, they had the soldiers, and they had the pride. They tragically underestimated the destructive power they had unleashed. Finally, we arrive at N for nationalism. Nationalism is the belief in one's own country, but in the years leading up to 1914, this pride became extreme and often aggressive. It fostered an us versus them mentality. In France, there was a deep-seated desire for revenge against Germany for the loss of the Alsace-Lorraine region decades earlier. In the Balkans, various ethnic groups, like the Serbs, dreamed of creating their own independent nations, free from the rule of the Austro-Hungarian and Ottoman empires. This intense national pride meant that countries were less willing to back down from a confrontation. Honor and prestige were on the line. This fervent, often jingoistic, nationalism transformed patriotism into a dangerous force that saw compromise as weakness and war as a chance to prove superiority. With all this tension simmering, the spark finally came on June 28, 1914, in the city of Sarajevo. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, was assassinated by a Serbian nationalist named Gavrilo Princip. This was the catalyst that set the dominoes falling. Austria-Hungary, seeing an opportunity to crush Serbian nationalism, issued a harsh ultimatum to Serbia. When Serbia didn't fully comply, Austria-Hungary declared war. This single act triggered the alliance system. Russia, seeing itself as the protector of the Slavic peoples, mobilized to support Serbia. Germany, allied with Austria-Hungary, then declared war on Russia. France, allied with Russia, was drawn in next. And when Germany invaded neutral Belgium to attack France, Great Britain honored its treaty to defend Belgium and declared war on Germany. Within a matter of weeks, the intricate web of alliances, fueled by years of imperial rivalry, military buildup, and nationalist fervor, had dragged the entire continent into a catastrophic war. So, as we look back, it's clear that World War I was not a sudden event. It was the tragic culmination of decades of mounting pressure. The alliances created the mechanism for a world war. Imperialism provided the motives for conflict, militarism supplied the weapons, and the will to use them, and nationalism provided the passionate, emotional fuel for the fire. The assassination in Sarajevo was merely the match that lit the fuse on a powder keg that Europe had been building for generations. The Great War was a lesson written in blood, a stark reminder of how ambition, fear, and pride can lead humanity down its darkest path, changing the world forever. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the past. If you found this exploration of history fascinating, please show your support by hitting that like button, subscribing to History with Shahzad, and ringing the notification bell so you won't miss our next journey into the stories that shaped our world. See you next time.